friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me talking about my thoughts on The Patient Taste of Nothing by Randy Rebay. I kind of have a lot of things to talk about, I kind of don't. We'll get into it in the video, so let's just kind of hop right in. So, because Teresa decided to read books that have a lot of trigger warnings to it, this one also has trigger warnings that I'm going to mention to you guys, especially since this is more of a contemporary situation, or was a contemporary situation that's happening in the Philippines. I don't know if it's currently still happening. I haven't been able to really get myself updated with the situation. Trigger warnings. We have death, we have kind of like a war on drugs, and the implications of a terrible government that has funded the situation. We have drug use, which is implied. We have trauma, because death. Toxic family. We have sex trafficking and sex assault, which are both also implied, and I think mentioned on the page, but the acts do not happen on the page. We also have poverty and starvation, again, mentioned on the page. You don't actually physically see it, or the character does not undergo it. Then we have glorification of a potential dictator. Take with that information as you will. Moving on to the synopsis of the book, this follows Jay, who's about 17 years old. He's on his last semester of high school, and he really just wants to spend it coasting. He just wants to play video games and enjoy himself and just kind of like enjoy the last bit of his high school career before he has to set off into the University of Michigan. However, he receives news that June, his cousin and his best friend growing up, has been killed, and as he's trying to figure out exactly what happens, he finds that there's a bit more sinister things happening at play here, potentially relating to drug use and the current state of the Philippines. So as a way to kind of figure out what exactly happened to his cousin, he takes a spring break and travels to the Philippines to figure out what happened. Now, my initial thoughts for this book was that I was really excited to read this. I don't see a lot of the Filipino culture, at least in YA. I know it's starting to change a little bit more on all spectrums. We're starting to see a lot more Filipino writers write about their experiences and kind of their homeland stuff, or include bits of our culture into like fantasy settings. However, when this book was published, I did not know much YA authors, including contemporary issues about the Philippines in their writing. So I was excited to read it, but then I was also kind of hesitant and wary, just because when people think of the Philippines, they think of beaches. Like, at least that has been my experience with telling people that I'm from the Philippines. They always tell me or ask me about the best beaches to go to, despite me having told them that I have not been to a Filipino beach since I was like 6. So that is a thing. I was wary because if this is one of the few YA books that talk about Filipino issues and talk about Filipinos as a whole, I didn't want the book to be their first introduction to the Filipino culture, because there is so much more behind it aside from the current events that the Philippines are currently going through. Moving on to things I did like, I really did like how easy this book was to get through. It's a really simple kind of read, it's not too difficult. With that being said, it's not difficult, but it also doesn't take away from any of from the gravity of the situation, or from the poetic way that Randy Rebay wrote this prose. It's very easy to get into, and I think the poetic way that he wrote everything, it kind of helps move the story along a little bit easier, and it makes it a little bit easier to digest, considering that it is a bit of a heavier topic, and a topic that not a lot of people are really versed in, that they really understand, because like you keep up with primarily your own current events and not so much the world around you, despite the internet making things so much more globalized. I really like seeing how Jay grew throughout the entirety of this book. He has spring break, which I think, I don't know, he spends 10 days in, so I think he has 2 weeks spring break, or he took half the week off. Either way, I like to see how he grew, even if it's in the slightest bit, because I feel like in this instance it's really easy to create a kid who goes in, tries to figure out the world, and then comes out like a savior, and like you see him grow, but not to the immense amount that someone would have grown had they been staying in the Philippines and experiencing these things and seeing exactly what happened over the course of like a month or a year, in comparison to like the week and a half that he was there. Another thing I like is seeing the Filipino culture. As you guys know, Filipino. I live with the Filipino culture, or I used to live with the Filipino culture quite daily, and I love seeing both the good and the bad. I love seeing them talk about like how much we've progressed a little bit, albeit it's not the progression that like it's not going at the speed that I think everyone else would like it to go at, but it's still progression. I really also enjoyed to see like the talk about the food and the differences in like the different dialects. No, dialects, is that proper? No, different languages in the Philippines, which I feel like a lot of people forget about because everyone's always like, oh yeah, I speak Tagalog, which is the case, but we also have like a different other languages in there that we don't really mention because Tagalog is kind of pretty much like the common language there because of colonization and all that fun stuff and media. I also like seek the bad. I feel like it's really easy to kind of show you like to mention that like, oh yeah, Filipinos are very family oriented, all this fun stuff, but then you forget about the bad, which is like the kind of the controlling, toxic nature that some Filipinos have, or the idea that we have to stay together as a family just because we're family, which is all very toxic. So I like seeing that aspect on top of seeing the good things that come about the Filipino culture, which is like the compassion, the food, the sense of loyalty and family, but also having that undercurrent of like the things that we don't really talk about in this culture. The last thing that I did like about this book was that Jay kind of came in with a savior complex. He wanted to know about his cousin, wanted to clear his name, and we kind of see that change throughout the book, but then we also get to see a lot of people kind of put him in his place. Just because I feel like in America you do have this weird savior complex. You want to save things and like make things better without actually having done anything. I like that a lot of people kind of sat him down and were like, I understand you're hurting. I get you want to know the truth and we can't always get the truth, but you also have to understand you're coming at this through the eyes of an outsider and you don't live here. You don't understand or see the things that we are exactly going through. And you need to sit down and realize that as well. Moving on to the only thing that I did not like, and that was the ending. I thought that it made sense for the ending to be kind of ambiguous and leave it open to imply that Jay does things that prevent or help better the Philippines in the future. But at the end of it, he still felt really lost. Like, not in the sense that, like, you know, he figured out his life and he's 17 and has it all locked down, but in the sense that, like, he still doesn't know what he wants from his family, his future in terms of like how he's gonna help, or even like settling how he feels about June at the end. It's just very weird. Like, he has like a very like hopeful thing for him, but we never get to see him overcome the idea that like the reason why June could have died. I don't think, for me personally, that he really settled with it and like made peace with it. So when he comes back and tells his parents his plans, he still feels a little lost and a little unsettled. And that bit, I was just like, we went through this entire journey with him to kind of settle his feelings on June, and I don't have that. So I feel like that was like the last bit of finality that we were missing that I really wanted to get. Overall, I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's a really good read. I think it's also really important because like I don't think that a lot of books nowadays, like we talk about contemporary issues, like there are some handfuls of books, but we don't talk about contemporary issues outside of America, especially in other non-Western countries. So I really like that this book mentioned it. I do want to say that if you are not in the right headspace, do not read this book just quiet. It's very heavy and hard-hitting. Like I said, the only thing that really dinged me was the ending, and I really enjoyed the book aside from that. So I highly recommend it, and I can't wait to see what else Randy Rebay will come out in the future. I don't know if he's writing one right now, actually, but you can hope. But that is it for this video, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have read this book, or maybe this review convinced you to pick up this book, please let me know in the comments below. But until next time, hit like, subscribe, comment. All of my Goodreads information, all of my social media and all that fun stuff will be listed down below, as well as the trigger warnings. And if I can find that website that has that list of trigger warnings, I will list that down below as well. But until next time, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!